Good morning, everyone. This is Jenny Sauer here from the End User Tools Group, and welcome to the fruit fly trapping data collection using ArcGIS Field Maps application training. It is the much anticipated 2023 training update, and we will be using the Field Maps mobile application, which we used last year. But I asked you a poll question here on a mobile device that you'd be using. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. I just asked what mobile device you plan to use to collect data for fruit fly, whether it's an iPad, iPhone, or if you're not sure. And it looks like we have a pretty almost even split with a little bit heavier to iPad. So I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. So thank you for doing that. That helps me out a little bit. What I'll do today is I will demonstrate the fruit fly application using my iPad, but I will try to remember to share my iPhone as well so that you can see what that looks like on the smaller screen. So getting started, I'm going to share two links in the chat box for you, and these are two resources for you that should help you with the training today, and just show you what those are. The first one is the mobile data collection tools website that you're looking at here. The top half of this website is all documents that will help walk you through things. For instance, under the general training documents page, you'll find information on how to use the ArcGIS Field Maps application itself, stepping you through things like signing in or downloading an offline map, all of those pieces. And then under the PEST program specific training documents page, let's jump over there. Fruit fly is listed. If we open that panel, we have a user manual and a quick reference guide. So the user manual goes into a lot more detail and also has screenshots and step-by-step instructions for using the fruit fly application within the ArcGIS Field Maps application. So make sure to check those out. I'm going to go back a step. The lower half of this main page is a video gallery, and you may have noticed this training today is being recorded. This training is going to show up here under this video gallery. Give me about a week, maybe less. I'll try my best to make it less than that. And the video will show up here. It'll be under this category PEST programs. You can search for it here in this search box. It'll show up kind of towards the top as the most recent training that was given. And feel free to use that as a refresher or share it with your colleagues that maybe couldn't make it here today. So keep this handy, this website. Secondly, the second link that I've given you is the link to a quiz, this quiz. And these quizzes are pretty generically the same. They're really not meant to add pressure. I give it to you early, so you can even fill this out as you and I talk through the training. So if you find the answer, fill it in. If you submit this quiz, this number 3 question here, the email address, type that carefully because it's going to use an automation to send you an email based on your entry here that will just say, congratulations, you've completed this fruit fly training. And so if you're like me, I like to keep those kind of aside, and I love to tell my manager at the end of a quarter how many trainings I've attended. Maybe your supervisor likes you to tell them that you've attended these trainings. So you'll get an email that will kind of confirm that. Again, no pressure here. It's really meant to kind of test your knowledge, make sure that you're paying attention, that you're getting the details that I'm putting out there. And it also gives me a measurement of my training so I can see how many of you completed the quiz, what kind of scores you got. Not that I'm pressuring you to do well, but if you do well, then I can see what questions you get right and what questions I need to do better at communicating with you. So that's the second one, a quiz. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? Firstly, we're looking at we're going up this stair steps to get to the top of the building. And the top of the building is where this prize is, where we feel totally confident, comfortable editing data in this field map for fruit fly. And just a quick analogy, maybe you're a little higher up than this guy is, but there's steps to this puzzle to get to the top. Some examples might be what we talked about earlier, having a device that you feel comfortable using, whether that's an iPad or an iPhone. Some foundational training, survey protocol understanding, and your National Operations Manager, thank you for being here, is Shaharra Usnick, and Shaharra's here. So If you have questions regarding survey protocol, that would be Shaharra, who's responsible for communicating those requirements. And then we have the ArcGIS Field Maps application itself. And remember that website I just showed you? There's generalized training on using that. We used it last year. You might feel totally comfortable, but I would suggest just going back and having a look. That video series is 10 different videos with the little steps kind of briefly summarized. And if there's something that you feel a little less comfortable with, have a look at it, refresh your memory. And then today, our training today is going to take you to the last step, which is just going to show you how to enter that data according to all of that knowledge you already have into this app as it was designed to collect data. I just recently came across kind of the word for this see that little walk pathway that people have formed just by walking in the grass and kind of making their own path? This is called a desire path. Now, you might have seen these like on hillsides where the animals have kind of created a path for each other and they follow it because it's the easiest way through now that so many animals have gone ahead of them. Well, humans are animals too, so we create these paths and they might seem like the easiest way. I thought it was really interesting that it's called a desire path. It makes sense because, you know, it's the easier way. I want to go straight to that little opening in the wood there, and so I'm just going to go straight to it instead of around. But I'm here to beg you to take the path today that's officially laid out for you. And I'm specifically talking about using a disconnected workflow. So I'm here to kind of beg you to stay on the path that was designed for you, and use, whether you're on an iPad or an iPhone, use this app while disconnected from Wi-Fi. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, but I thought this is a good time to say, don't go this way, stay on the path, please. And we'll talk about it a little bit more, especially since some of you are using an iPhone, and it can be really convenient to just stay connected, especially since we have cellular data plans just kind of there waiting for us, and we might want to do it that way. But let's stay on the path and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So today, what are we going to talk about? I apologize if you've been to some of my trainings before. In fact, I had one earlier this morning and I see some repeat names. We're going to go over some of the things that we talked about in all of our trainings, and that's because they're just really darned important. So we're going to talk about this ArcGIS Field Maps application, how to sign in, the difference between a training and an official map. Again, we're going to hit that disconnected workflow with an overview of what that is and what it should look like. We're going to look at the layers that have been created to collect data in the Fruitfly app. And we'll look at the data form live and collect some data together in our practice training map. And then finally, I'm going to give you a couple of reminders that hopefully I've hit on already, but just make sure that you're getting all that information and you're ready to go. So just jumping in then, the ArcGIS Field Maps application. This application was specifically designed by the company to collect data while disconnected, meaning not connected to Wi-Fi or the internet at all. It's created as a field application, assuming that there is a ruralness to it or that there's kind of intrinsically unknown connectivity. Again, remember our mobile data collection tools webpage. There's a written user guide that walks you through a lot of steps, and there's a 10 video series that's self-paced that you can take yourself through as sort of a prerequisite to even this finalized training. If you've not done it, please do that. Make sure that you feel comfortable and confident using field maps. When you first tap on that field maps icon on your device, you're going to get something that looks kind of like this. It gives you the option to sign in with ArcGIS Online or sign in with ArcGIS Enterprise or skip sign in. And here our federal employees, our federal maps, they're all hosted within this enterprise option. That's where we have FedRAMP secured a FedRAMP secured system. So we're always going to tap sign in with ArcGIS Enterprise. And then kind of tricky, the next thing you'll get is the first time you do that, you'll only see these bottom two options: specify a new URL with that little plus sign, or scan code. And you're going to tap specify a new URL, and that will open the keyboard, and you'll have to manually and carefully type in that URL. And then after that, we'll have it will hold on to, I'll give you a little arrow here. It'll hold on to that. So see here, I've got this URL just sitting here. That's because previously I entered this URL. And so now I can just go ahead and tap that URL, and it will go ahead and take me through the e-authentication sign-in process. So that's something to keep in mind on first entry. Something I mentioned a little bit earlier, the End User Tools group creates for you and for practice a separate training version of this map, and that is held on our Stage portal. And the way that you access that is through how we just went through that sign-in process, the URL that you type in which to sign into the ArcGIS Field Map application. And so I'm just going to give you a couple of little arrows here, there and there, to point out the difference. The official data collection URL, or the production portal, has maps.mrp. The training or practice URL says maps-stg.mrp. That -stg stands for stage. So if you think about when you want practice, which we want you to be able to do, or like today, I'll be demonstrating, so putting in data that is not official, I'm going to use a training map. You want to make sure that you are in the stage environment versus the production. And this is a question on your quiz. So if you are entering real official data, you want to make sure you are in the official portal, that MRP. And if you're playing around or practicing or testing or demonstrating or anything not official, you want to make sure that you're in that stage or training map. And there are a couple ways you can tell that you're in that training map. For instance, the training word, that word all caps training, is in the title of our maps in that stage environment. And the map background, or base map, is kind of a dull gray, where the official map has beautiful imagery behind it. We'll have a look at that and kind of make sure of it. But just basically be careful, make sure that you're in the proper map when you're collecting official data versus training or practice data. And we'll have a look at that too. Now, the disconnected mode workflow, or collecting data while not connected to Wi-Fi. Again, like I said earlier, please resist the desire to cut corners, especially when you're on an iPhone, and just collect data live or well connected. Remember, stay on the path, don't take that desire path. And the Field Maps application is specifically designed to operate in disconnected mode. So the way that it works is there's a little bit of office prep, or prep while you are connected to Wi-Fi. An area of interest is downloaded to your device while you're connected. Then the device is disconnected from the internet. And I've got a little bullet at the bottom here, parking lot tests. What I mean is, make sure before you actually leave the parking lot that all of that seems to be in order. But once you've done that and you're disconnected, you go on out into the field, collect data. At the end of the day, or when that data is complete, come back to an office or connect to a Wi-Fi that is reliable, synchronize that data. And I've got a little bullet point here to charge the device. Now, the really important steps are in this red box. Those are the steps that matter and help set you up for collecting data through the day. The other really important step is that sync at the end of the day. And in fact, there are some pieces to the Fruitfly app this year that really would help you out if you synchronize data in the morning before you left and in the evening, because that sync is a two-way street. So it both pulls information into your downloaded map and pushes your collected data up into that online map. So that's the really important part. Data layers for Fruitfly. This is a screen capture from my iPad, so we'll look at this same view a little bit later. There are two operational, or two layers, that are editable by you all out there in the field. And there are these two that have the toggle blue, or they're enabled. There's a new layer here, Fruitfly Trap Schedule Status. And when it's enabled or visible, when it's turned on, it displays over the top of the trap sites a symbology that tells the status of that trap. And for fruit fly in this year, there is a reaction being done by the GIS group. So overnight, there are scripts that are run based on the activity entered. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the trap sites 2023 layer is where you will enter your trap site locations and activities based on those locations. And the map notes points is also a new layer, which allows you to enter hazards or information which is shared across to all surveyors. And then the trap sites for 2022 is here as reference. So you have two kind of reference layers, the status and 2022 sites, and then two that you can edit. One is the trap sites and one is map notes points. Before we dive too much further, let's talk about some trapping workflow as far as how it looks when we enter data in this app. The first visit is where you place a trap, where actually the symbol is placed on the map. And there's some data collected on that symbol, including the first visit's install. So there is an install date field on placing the trap, assuming that on placing that trap, you have actually installed a trap. And then all future visits are connected to that trap site, that first visit, with an activity. One of the flows that kind of can get folks a little bit confused is this relocate workflow, which means if you think it through, it probably makes sense to you. So let's just take a little pause and think it through. You're going to remove a trap from an original spot, walk to a new one, and then place a trap. So the original spot, you're going to want to select that trap and enter an activity of remove. And when you remove that trap, sometimes this is where people think, well, that symbol on the map should disappear. And actually that's not correct. That symbol should remain. It should remain because that's part of the whole data entry history of that trap site, but the last activity should be remove. And this is one of those that will change with that new schedule status layer. So overnight, the GIS group, their script will run, and if an activity of remove is entered, the symbol will change to inactive. So that's where that little layer will help you show where those traps were removed. They'll become inactive as far as the symbol. I'll show you what that looks like, but just hold that in your brain for a little bit. So you remove the trap by entering an activity of remove, walk that trap over to the new spot, and then you go ahead and place a trap. So that sometimes gets folks a little bit turned around. Let's have a look. We've talked about it enough a little bit. Let's look at that data form. I'm putting this schedule status in parentheses because it's there for you to use, but most of our other trapping programs have also kind of a mandatory like do status that comes up, and fruit fly does not have a mandatory do status, but if you remove the trap like we just talked about, it will pop over to inactive. So when you enter a trap site, it will default as current and it won't change over to do like some other programs, but this is still important for you to look at, and I'll show it to you now. So I'm going to pull my iPad up and give you that view. So this is my PPQ iPad. I'm going to go ahead and open Field Maps. And Field Maps really tries to help you out. I was already signed in. It just popped me right back in. I was in the fruit fly map previously, so it pulled me all the way in. I'm going to go back 2 times to the main map menu. And you can see here right off the bat, I've got a lot of training in the title and in the thumbnails. And I also know that I'm signed into that stage portal, but if I was unsure, remember when in doubt, sign out, I would go to my profile menu up here, scroll up and sign out. So everything's looking okay today. We're just going to play a little bit. The training map is the right place to be. And here at the top, I've got training, PPQ, Fruit fly trapping 2023 field map. And I've already downloaded offline areas. So I'm going to open that map card. And because I am connected to Wi-Fi, there I am connected, I'm also seeing the online map. So I can see the online map, but I also have downloaded a map area. I, in the field, would want to disconnect from Wi-Fi, but I wanted to show you that. I might be tempted because I'm connected to use this online map and just go ahead and collect data, but I'm begging you, please don't use that desire path. So let's open this downloaded map area. And a couple icons across the top right are really important. I see these two arrows, which is our sync button, and this is indicating that this is a downloaded map. If you're working live, you won't see a sync button. And if I tap that, I have auto sync is disabled. See, that toggle is not blue, it's not on, and that is correct. I don't want auto sync working on its own. The device is meant to try to be smart and connect and synchronize things when it can, but I want to be able to sync when I know I have a reliable Wi-Fi network, so I want that off. And we can see that I don't have any pending edits at this point, so I'll close that box. Next, I have what looks like a stack of papers. That's my layers menu. And this probably looks familiar to the slide we saw earlier. And we've got two enabled. These are the two layers that I can edit if I wish. And I'm going to enable this trap status. So I just want you to look at the symbols I've got here on the map while I do that. And you can see the symbology went right over top of those. I've got a check mark, exclamation, and a little kind of minus or caution sign. Now, what do all these mean? Well, with these layers enabled now, I can look at the legend, and the legend is only going to show me the legend for the layers that are on. So that's important that I have those on. And now this little three-dot menu has a legend for me. And we can see the schedule status legend tells us that check mark is current. I've got one due and I have one inactive. Now, this due won't happen on a routine basis. This is something that can be done by an editor or a field GIS specialist. I did this myself just so you could see what it looked like on the map, but you will see inactive happen if the last trap activity was remove. Then we have all the trap sites, which we saw, these are actually underneath that schedule status symbology. And finally, map notes points. And we can see a couple of these. I've got one hazard and one info. So we'll look at that in a little bit. Okay, with all of that on, what I'm going to do is turn off the schedule status layer. I don't want to see that anymore. And let's say we're ready to place a trap. So we want to add data. And the way to do that is this add button. I know it's that simple. So we go ahead and tap the add button. And we're given an option menu of a trap and lure combination. And we go ahead and pick one of those. Let's see, just for the sake of difference, I'll go for this green diamond. And also so that you can see it well, I'm going to pull it away from my actual location and update that point. So there we are. There's that trap. And I'm going to go ahead and start entering data. So you can see we've got gray asterisks after some of these points, and that means that those are required fields. It pulled in by default the trap and lure I chose from the outset. I am not going to be able to use survey protocol because I don't know it, but you would enter this data according to that. If your next field is going to use this keyboard, you'll get a little next option, and if not, it'll just say done. So I can hit next and drop back down to the next one. I'm going to name this in the same way and hit done. Host gives me a list of hosts to choose from, and I can scroll down and find them, or I can go ahead and start typing in that search box. Habitat, same thing, I've got a list. The agency is defaulted to USDA APHIS, and if I need to change that, I tap it and I can go ahead and choose the other option. I've got a little hint here in the box, first and last names is what needs to be entered. Okay, so first and last name. Trap site comments. I'm just going to put test here because I want to remind myself this is not real data, but you would put any comments that's appropriate there. Install date opens a calendar. We are restricted. If I go back a couple months, it won't let me enter anything outside of this year, but this is where I sometimes have trouble if I've tapped the wrong date. And to return to today's date, you can just tap today, and there we are. And then I like to close it so that I don't accidentally touch anything I shouldn't. We're also defaulted to no as the answer for year-round trapping, but I can change that if I need to. And then we also have some optional groups. So these little groups of questions here at the bottom are minimized, but I can maximize just by tapping on their name or the title of the group. So we have optional address questions. You don't see those asterisks there because these are not required fields. You can fill them out if you wish. I'll close that up. And then we also have optional contact information. Same thing, not required. And then we have quality control report. And these are not editable by you in the field. They are maintained by GIS or by editors, but these are here minimized as well. And finally, I feel pretty good about it, but I'm going to give it a good look-see one more time. Everything looks okay. And then I'm going to hit submit. And once that's been submitted, you can see a couple changes happened here. That sync button now has a little dot on the arrow going out. That's just a quick indicator that says, hey, you've got edits on your device in your downloaded map. You need to sync. It also left the icon or the symbol on the map selected, and you can tell because it's got this kind of blue around it or cyan color, and the data form is over here in view form for us. So if you were here and that was selected, you could continue by creating an activity or editing that. But instead, I'm going to close that out and show you another trap. So let's say that we were going to come to this trap up here and let's say maybe just monitor that trap. In order to enter that trap activity, I'm going to want to select that trap site on the map. So now we see it's selected just like that other one was. And I'm going to add an activity to this location. In order to do that, I can either hit this little link icon at the bottom to access that activity table, or I can scroll up on that data form to the fruit fly trap activities table, and there's that link icon again. Tap that, and I can see the history of this trap, that it was baited on the 16th and serviced on the 16th. And then to add an activity, I'll tap add and follow the same kind of routine. We've got required fields and we have some hints here, first and last name. Okay. Activity type, I'm going to say, let's say serviced. And I did not take a field sample, so I'm going to say none. And activity comments, I'll say test. I just want to make sure I'm keeping track that this is not real data. And the activity date here operates the same. It opens a calendar. And again, if you get the wrong date, get back to today and close that up. And now I'm going to give it a nice little, let's see, did I get everything right there? One last look and submit. Now, let's say that there is something about this original trap that you and I placed together. Maybe the host or something, I got that wrong. If I need to edit it, that operates similarly. So I'll want to select that trap site. I'll want to be sure that maybe the trap ID will tell me that that is the right trap. Just check to be sure you've selected the right one. And you might have already noticed there's a little pencil down here, and that's kind of the universal sign of edit, right? Or I could scroll up again until I get to that edit option with the pencil there and go ahead and tap that. And what it's done is that form that was view only is now open to edits. So I can go ahead and change that host. Let's say it's an apple tree, and now I'll want to submit that edit. So there's that one. Okay, so let's say we want to have a look at this these map notes points. So we have a couple here. I'm just kind of guessing at some ideas for what could be done. For instance, this blue is just an info. If I go ahead and tap that, I can view what's been entered. And I just said in the comment, great spot for lunch. Just an info. But if there is a hazard, here's an idea for a hazard. It could be maybe a mean dog or a neighbor that's really unfriendly. I've got here, this is kind of a little walking path, and I just said footbridge over farmer's ditch, varied water levels and speeds. So, you know, I'm guessing at what might be really a hazard that you want to watch out for. Maybe you don't want to place a trap there because it might not last very long. And you have the ability to both edit and delete these here in the training version as well. Okay, Finally, we have we've got the same idea. Let's say we want to add a new hazard or info. Same pathway as the other layer. To add information, you hit the add button. And it starts at the top because this layer is on top of the other and gives us all those trap allure combos. But if we scroll down to the bottom, you'll find the map notes. And you have here the option of an info or hazard point to add. So let's add info. And just for the sake of you being able to see it again, I'm going to pull it out away and update the point over there. So here we are, we're adding this info. And again, same thing. The comments are also required on this because of course we don't want to just know info, we want to know the info, right? So we'll add Jenny Sauer as the name, and the comments we want to say, I don't know, let's say, what would be a good info? Lots of parking here. Okay, and then next, and it's going to have a note date, which is today. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Okay, now what does this look like from the iPhone? Let me get my iPhone out for you. Okay. So as you can see, smaller screen. If I open Field Maps, we've got the same thing. It was actually open in the background. Let me close it so you see a better loading. And it's doing the same thing. Remember, I was signed in before and it jumped me right in. It's also jumped me right into the device. And you might notice right now you're looking at something a little bit different on this device. I'm connected to Wi-Fi, but you don't see that word training, do you? So let's see if I can find fruit fly. I'm going to search fruit fly. And we've been having problems with the production portal, but what I'm going to do is show you instead a different map just so you see it. But instead of that stage portal, I've got a pretty good idea since I don't see training here. This is probably the production portal. Again, if I needed to sign out, I'd go to my profile picture. I would sign out, and when in doubt, do that. Please do sign out. But I can tell right off the bat, what I'm looking at here is our production portal. And I do have an offline area here for this other app for EWBBB. And let's have a look at that just so you see the difference. So you had the title, didn't have training. And I'm going to say later for that. But look at this beautiful backdrop. We've got imagery in the background versus look over here to the right on the iPad. It's just kind of a dim light gray combination. So those two things should tell you right off the bat. Just in this app, if I were to hit the plus button, we have a similar thing going where we have the choices here. I can move this up by tapping and holding and pulling up so that I have more view. And if I pick one, I'll get a data form as well that I can pull up and down. So really what you're looking at is kind of making good use of the space. If you need to see the map, you can scroll that data form down. And if you need to concentrate on the data form, you can pull it up. So I'm sorry I wasn't able to get into fruit fly here, but that's kind of the essence of the difference there. As far as iPad versus iPhone, it's really just making good use of that screen when you have it. All right. So we looked at those two operational or editable layers, and those were the trap sites layer and then here the map notes points layer. One thing to be really careful of with the map notes points layer, that is shared with all. It is meant to help your fellow trappers or your fellow surveyors out. So don't put things that are private there. Make sure it is really helpful to all to see, and just be careful there. Some things to be careful of. Remember the difference between official and training versions? It's a production URL and a staging URL. So hopefully you could see the two differences both in the title and in the base map or that background imagery versus that gray imagery. Just be sure you're in the right one when you're entering data. Use the disconnected mode. Make sure you're downloading your maps and using those while not connected to Wi-Fi, but then also make sure that you're doing that data sync daily. And actually, I would recommend morning and evening, especially if you want to pull in those map notes and the updated status from both GIS and from your fellow surveyors. Be careful with data collection. I don't mean to insult you. It's really kind of a personal problem. I can't tell you how many times I've like even mistyped my own name. So just give it that one more look before you hit submit. And the map notes layer, again, be careful, remember it's shared, but use that. Hopefully it's useful to you. You might have noticed also there is within field maps, it's a feature of field maps that there is always a markup layer. Now the markup layer I really wouldn't recommend you using since you have a map notes layer to help each other out with. The difference is that markup layer is private to you, so it only lives on your device. Only use that if your supervisor wants you to or has found a use for it, because it is hard to share and it does kind of then stay in your device in your map. The submit button, we didn't see it fail today because I completed all the required fields, and that's really what it is contingent on. Either a required field has not been completed or the GPS signal is not good enough to meet the requirements. So if you miss one and you go ahead and tap submit, it's going to take you through the steps to correct that and then allow you to submit. So just watch for that a little bit. Finally, we went through a lot here together today, but you still might need some help. Things happen, right? So remember the Fruit Fly Program National Operations Manager is Shaharra Usnick. If you have, I've got here iPad, but iPhone as well. iPad or iPhone issues, CECIT supports our devices, and so open a ticket with them. If you're having trouble with accessing these maps or with your editing role or with the field maps application in general, I may start in this order, but typically your supervisor is going to know where to go from there. So start with your supervisor. Your supervisor might go to the local field GIS specialist supporting your area, or they might email this webgis.connect@usda.gov for a little bit more help. And all things, this EUTG stands for End User Tools Group. That's my group. Any training of that kind, remember that mobile data collection tools webpage. Check that out or feel free to contact us at any point. So just a couple things that we talked about today. This is that slide from earlier. We talked about the app itself, being able to sign in and to the correct portal so that you're entering data, if it's official, in the official, if it's training or practice, in that stage portal. We overviewed the disconnected workflow. We looked at the 2 layers that you can edit in the Fruit Fly app, and we saw the data forms associated, and we practiced a little bit, and we went over some of the reminders of things you should watch out for. Don't forget to test yourself with that quiz. Take a few minutes to do that and make sure that you're clear on some of that. And I'm just going to leave you here with, I see a couple things in the chat box already, so I promise you I see that off to the side. But I'm just going to say, if there's any questions, feel free to type it in the chat or raise your hand, and I'm happy to try to answer that. All right. Well, I'm going to let you have your 19 minutes back of the hour. I know that I go through this stuff quickly, and I sincerely ask that you reach out if you need help. You can reach out to anyone on my team. Vlad's been active in chat trying to kind of help a little bit. I'm going to move back to getting help here. You have Shaharra Usnick as your National Operations Manager. Anything survey protocol, any questions about the training today, reach out to my group. If you need help, here's that kind of in this order list, and that email address for webgis.connect if you find yourself stuck, and it happens to the best of us. But thank you so much for being here, and I wish you the best. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.